So welcome everybody to this latest in our series of In Conversations. And this one is actually part of a triple header looking at the work of the National Institute for Health Research. In the coming weeks, we're going to be hearing from Louise Wood, the Deputy Chief Executive of the Institute, and also Professor Mike Lewis, who is the co-director of the I4I, the Invention for Innovation and Small Business Research Initiative programs, which many of you listening to and watching this will have had experience of. But we're going to start where is the best place to start, actually, with the National Office for Clinical Research Infrastructure. And I'm joined today by James Richards, Dr. James Richards, who's Head of Business Development at NOCRI. James, thanks for joining us today. Before we get into the work of the office and the wider sort of clinical research infrastructure, I always ask this question because people are interested. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background that is relevant to your role within NIHR.
Great, thanks, Richard. Good to be here this morning. So, yes, I joined NIHR about 2.5 or so years ago in the NOCRI business development team. Before that, I worked for a digital health tech startup. They specialized in remote patient monitoring and were starting to move into things like digital therapeutics and digital biomarkers. So I was one of the partnerships team members there, trying to run around the world selling solutions and potential, I guess, new products into biopharmaceutical companies and large medtech companies too. And I helped set up and sort of develop some of the kind of early projects that they had working with NHS trusts in London as well, when they were starting to actually get the technology out to patients too. And before that, I worked at Cancer Research UK. I was in the tech transfer business there for a couple of years, working in one of the sort of business units that was unusually not branded as CI UK. It was a separately branded organisation called Zimbio, because we did stuff that was a little bit more broad than kind of the specific cancer focus. And we used to acquire and license out research reagents, so cell lines, hybridomas, what else, mouse models, all the kind of bits and pieces that I guess academic researchers, but our focus was in particular pharmaceutical biotech researchers, and then the big kind of reagent resellers as well. So all the kind of people that you'd expect when you're buying your antibodies or cell lines. We used to license the technology out to all of those and to kind of global pharma for their R&D purposes as well. And before then, I was kind of a traditional classic kind of research scientist. I did a PhD looking at infectious disease. I did that on rotavirus a number of years ago now, looking at technology that's actually quite interesting and relevant in terms of the kind of COVID vaccines of today. So I spent a lot of time working on RNA that I was synthesizing in the lab. And after that, I did a postdoc Imperial and UCL looking at glucose sensing in the brainstem. We did a lot of work on rodent models, the sympathetic nervous system and gut-brain axis and kind of feeding paradigm. So quite a strong kind of research background. But you can see I kind of, moved across different places over the last few years as well, kind of touching on different parts of a research system and kind of innovation development in general.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, your experience will chime with a lot of people, and I imagine there's quite a few digital startups will be watching to and listening to this. So that's really interesting, and it sort of it sets the stage nicely now. About NOCRI, I get exposed to the NOCRI, the full NOCRI treatment probably about every couple of years, and we did so recently when you actually joined a session with our board, and we looked at the role of NIHR and various bits of its work programme. And the thing about NOCRI, the analogy I use, I think it's a bit like getting people to visit Birmingham. It's a bit tricky to get them to come along, and when they get here, they go, "Wow, I never realised." So I think NOCRI's, we ought to all do a better job. I think it's one of our kind of worst kept secrets, or best kept secrets actually, for the whole kind of life sciences space. So tell us a little bit about the work of the office, James, and what you do and how you can help some of the people who are listening today.
Sure, thanks, Richard. It's interesting that you say the NOCRI treatment. That's something I might repackage later on. And Birmingham University, to be fair, is absolutely beautiful. So there's a very good reason to go to Birmingham, not just to walk around the campus. So NOCRI, what do we do? We are effectively, well, maybe we should start from the beginning. We were set up to try and support people to navigate the NIHR. And, we're looking at something that was set up probably about 10 or 11 years ago. And the NIHR innovation, kind of burgeoning trend of digital health, it's all changed quite a lot in that time. And we're a couple of teams that are focused on supporting and catalyzing collaboration. We've got a very broad specific remit in terms of supporting the NIHR. We are segregated in different ways, and the team I lead supports industry. And our job really is to make it easier for people to understand what it is that NIHR can offer. The complex nature of the UK innovation ecosystem means that people from the UK and internationally do get confused as to what organisation is relevant for them and when. And it's part of our job to help them understand that actually, if you come to me and my colleagues, we can help make that a little bit more clear. You know, people often say to us, you know, there's just a lot of fog out there. Who do we go to? Who's really relevant? Who can help? And we try and do that, not just on behalf of NIHR, but I suppose to some degree on behalf of UK PLC, because we know that convincing international companies in particular, but this is clearly true for companies that are set up in the UK, to ensure that they stay here and develop strong roots here, that there's lots of bits of the system that, if they are clearly presented, are incredibly useful, important to them. So that's our job in a nutshell. You know, we sell the NIHR offer, is the terminology that we use. We've got a strong offering in a variety of different areas for people. We will, to give confidence to kind of all the listeners here, talk to every company that approaches us, whether you're in remit or not. Not that I wish to encourage a kind of, you know, landslide of irrelevant kind of conversations, but we do our best to try and say, actually, maybe you should go somewhere else. But if you're within NIHR's remit, what we will do is we'll set out our offer. We've got a number of pillars that we look at when we try and present this to industry. So funding is an interesting one, particularly for SMEs. We've got some very strong programs that are nicely presented for industry that can help them with R&D for medtech. We also support the AI in Health and Care Award, which is interesting for those people developing digital health tools. And there are a number of other programs that can be of interest to people if they're working in collaboration. But what you need to do some of those collaborations is expertise. And we as an organisation support, I think, something in the region of 25,000 researchers. Some of those are in our sort of core NIHR centres, so things like the biomedical research centres that support a lot of medtech related innovations, but also the medtech and in vitro diagnostic cooperatives that are, you know, the jewel in the crown, I think, in terms of the NIHR's offer. And these are really sort of specialist, knowledgeable people that can support the development of any sort of medtech. And I mean, you know, digital diagnostics, in vitro diagnostics, and medical devices. When I say medtech, in that kind of remit, they've got lots of expertise that are really relevant when you're collecting the evidence that you need. And we know that that evidence is very much bespoke to the type of technology that you've got, where you might fit into the pathway. You may not know the best place for you to fit in, and they can help you with looking at where your intervention is best placed. So there's a huge amount of support that's there for companies to access them, and the centres are set up to work with industry as well. There are other things that are relevant in expertise. We've got applied research centres, and potentially for some of the kind of medtech innovations, we've got patient safety translational research centres too. So the offering is incredibly broad, not just in sort of early stages of translational kind of research and bringing prototypes into a kind of clinical setting, and it goes all the way through to real world evidence generation as well, when you might have, you know, the purpose and the safety of your technology defined, but actually you want more evidence in a clinical research setting to sort of convince payers and providers that the value is there to them as well as to the patient in terms of that intervention. The other thing we do as an organisation through the Clinical Research Network is support a huge amount of setup, delivery and performance monitoring of research. There is a core sort of team that works in the CRN at national level, but there's regional representation through the local clinical research networks. And if you're looking at setting up a study within the NHS as kind of that delivery framework, you can come to me and my team and we'll connect you directly into those colleagues of ours, because they're very good at helping you navigate the complicated things of costings, or trying to figure out whether your protocol, if you're an international company, is suitable for the UK, or some tweaks that you might need to make. In addition to those kind of things, we're also here to help you with understanding how the study is going, looking at performance monitoring. Maybe you need a key opinion leader or somebody to help run your study, and you're looking for a couple of extra sites. So there's lots of things that we can kind of offer there as well. I mean, there's much more that NIHR and NOCRI does, but I don't want to go on too long. So I'll kind of draw it to a close. I think they're the main bits there that are relevant for your audience.
So there's a lot of that audience is now going, wow, we have no idea. So Jed, along with this sort of link to this conversation, we put on a few links to get hold of to contact NOCRI. What's the best way of doing that, and what should people look out for in terms of your outputs?
Yeah, sure. So they can contact us through the email address, which is nocri@nihr.ac.uk. That's NOCRI. we look at that all the time, and it comes through to our business development team, and we're there to pick it up relatively quickly. In terms of our outputs, I mean, we spend a lot of trying to support the matchmaking of companies and expertise through the parts of the infrastructure that I mentioned. We go to conferences to try and facilitate that. Hopefully, some of the things people will see are the case studies. Some of those might be funded through some of the NIHR programs. Some of those might be supported through commercial funding, but we'll then put those out on our website or LinkedIn channels to say, look, where we supported this company to find the expertise, design an appropriate study that was then delivered within the NHS to get the evidence needed so that maybe they could get a nice approval, for example, and regulatory clearance. So it's all those kind of things that we try and help piece things together and support people. And I should probably mention here that although perhaps not within the obvious remit of R&D, the NIHR Academy can support training and development. So lots of the SMEs and other listeners here today might be interested in helping researchers from the academic space come into industry or vice versa. There are some programs to help actually that transition of expertise in terms of building capacity and workforce that NIHR can help with too. So outside of the kind of classic remit of R&D, but the offering, as I said, is very broad.
That's great. Oh, thanks, James. And we should perhaps come back and have another conversation about the Academy. That sounds really exciting. Listen, thanks so much for your time today. One of the complaints and moans I have continually is that we don't invest enough in very high caliber signposting manned by really clever people. We clearly do in the NIHR through NOCRI, and we promise to do a better job at signposting people to you in the future, both in the UK and abroad as part of our international outreach as well. As I said, every time I get the NOCRI treatment, I go, wow, I've forgotten, and a lot of other people will be saying, wow, we didn't realise. So thanks so much for your time, and prepare yourself for hopefully something of an avalanche of interested companies who want to come and work alongside you. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Richard.